everybody. I'm Candid Frank. He's David Morasuti. And DM, I got to tell you, it was an interesting weekend of football. We already talked about the Argo game, but what we can talk about, did you get a chance to go to any practices this week?
I did. I actually went today.
Ah, well, tell us a bit about what happened.
They had to work. They were working indoors today. You saw did a lot of scout teamwork, so a lot of looking at what Edmonton potentially could throw at them. Um, yeah, they were. I mean, this is a team that relies heavily on being able to make the big plays, and they definitely want to make sure that they give Chad enough time to make those plays. It's going to be it's going to be a very interesting matchup, that's for sure. It looks like Mackay Polk didn't practice yesterday. He wasn't practicing today, so I don't know if
He's a
could be
watch.
an potential that he doesn't play, which that's their number two receiver, not well, I would say their number two receiver not in. So I think if he's not playing, it looks like Jake Herslow would get in, and that's what a lot of people were hoping for. They we get to see Jake Herslow at some point.
Yes, for the first time this year. He's been pretty much invisible, even on paper.
Yeah, and like Common, who kind of was a big. He made a big push in training camp to take a spot. Um, they had to Mackay Polk coming back last year changed a lot of that too, because that's where Herzl got a lot of the play, right? Was kind of he took the Mackay Polk role, and when Polk came back, Herzl was still there because obviously he had such a good year that it was hard to take him out. But it's been a little. I'm been very surprised that he hadn't been able to stay in, considering what he did last year. But I think they were trying to also make a point to say that they got guys right now that are playing, playing better. Right? It's a matter of they're taking advantage of players that they have that are, doing, I guess, what the coach wants. But I do think this is his opportunity, right? Show well, maybe he takes somebody else's spot in the lineup because Unger is still, they need a Canadian there. They need Kevin Mittal. They need those two Canadians there. So there's not as many open opportunities as there have been in the past.
And the ability that always can be an impact on a player in the long term is the short term situation where an injury could cause them to lose a position. So
Yeah, I mean, like he was hurt to start camp.
right,
So Herzl was dealing with an injury during camp, and that did take some time for him to get back. But it also meant that he was behind the eight ball, in comparison to other players, right? So he injury kind of that does happen where injuries do put a player in a position where they do lose their spot for no
yeah,
out of situations out of their control.
yeah. Well, out of their control in the sense that we know historically many a player has played injured, and football's notorious for players playing a little bit nicked, right? Because they don't want to go to the sideline, they don't want to not wear the uniform, they don't want to take a chance in losing their position because there's so many times so often that a player gets injured, somebody else steps in, and next man up mentality sometimes means the next man up. Hey, this guy's pretty good. Maybe we'll keep him for a little while. Now you'll have to wait for your turn, and it pushes you back, not as a starter but as a standby. And no player wants to be a standby. So a lot of times, even with little injuries, they won't talk about the injuries that send me out there, send me out there. So it's tough. Players are waiting, are chomping at the bit, and the league itself, the Canadian Football League, and this organization, the Toronto Argonauts, and along with every other organization, the plethora of players there are available to the Canadian Football League. As much as, I'm not here to try and say, oh, well, those shining stars we talk about being great players, they're easily replaced. No, not easily, but they can be replaced. They can find players who are really good, and opportunity is all they're looking for. The opportunity to play is something all players want. And Mackay Polk, when he came last year, when he came back, in my opinion, he wasn't the same guy that left. He suffered a little bit of the same thing that BC quarterback suffered from the disappointment of not making the NFL. Because let's be clear, anybody who tells you that they don't prefer the dream of going to the NFL than playing in the Canadian Football League, they're just lying to you. And that doesn't make the Canadian Football League a secondary league. It makes them the Canadian Football League. That's just the way it is here. That players want to play in the NFL. Get over it.
Yeah, and that's just kind of the story for every football player, right? It kind of just plays out that way.
They want to be with the best, and you got to
Yeah.
you can't help but want to play for the best.
No, absolutely.
All right, so the Argos played. We'll talk about it again. We talked about it already, but we'll just a quick review of Calgary, and I just remembered. There's my microphone. I'll bring that in. Use the microphone. What do you think? Yeah, I think I'll bring that in. The Argos looked good, both good and bad. Kelly looked both good and bad. But the good about the Argos is, and every really good team has to figure out at the end of the game, ending up having more points than the other team. And that's what they did in this game. And they did it um, really on an important last possession.
Yeah, I mean it's executing, right? They weren't executing in other games in those moments, so you have to, you know, find ways to do it, when things are not going your way, right? And so they did a good job of doing that. Now, you don't want to put yourself in the hole and in bad situations. They did do that, and I did talk to Mike Miller about that. And look, it's all about breaking down situations and learning from situations, right? Certain situations call for things. Plays doesn't necessarily go your way, and you have to kind of learn from it. And that's what the Argos are going to have to be doing, right? There's a lot that stayed the same, but there's a lot that a lot that changed. All right, like we do know that not everything stayed from what Ryan Dinwiddie was doing. We know there's always going to be some sort of changes, but I do think that they have better. They're learning from it in some sense. Whether they'll continue that, like I don't, they know they can't continue to play the way they did, and they'll have to change some of that. But I do think that they're at least. I can see where they're making those improvements at least.
We do know that the main characteristic that this team shot for from the beginning, from the very first interview that the head coach made, and that was aggressive, be aggressive, be aggressive, be aggressive, be aggressive. And they are aggressive. And we've learned early in this season that sometimes that aggressiveness leaves them open to a bad situation from time to time. But it's like the quarterback. Now, I think he's rusty. So there's some of the mistakes he's making isn't about really aggressiveness. It's more about, getting into the rhythm of actually playing again. So what looks like terrible, I think, is rust. What we see, though, is his desire to win for Kelly is unlimited. There's no ceiling. He just loves to win. And he's come to the team with a bit of a different attitude where he's willing to say mea culpa, mea culpa, mea culpa. He's not been the guy who sits there and goes, makes remarks that are slightly throwing other people under the bus. He starts by throwing himself under the bus. And, that's a good quality to have, and it endears you with your teammates. That doesn't mean he he can't after the game walk up to a player and say, "Hey, da da da, what are we supposed to do better?" and that kind of stuff. The adjustments that the Argos have made this year have been hit and miss, but they have made adjustments. And to your point, as far as this being a Ryan Dinwiddie team, it's not a Ryan Dinwiddie team. I don't even think last year's team that played for Ryan Dinwiddie was a Ryan Dinwiddie team. I think this is a team that had met its moment and needed a change. And it didn't matter what Ryan did. This team was going to be the way they were. And now you get a fresh start with a new coach. You get a new attitude. You get a new set of eyes watching how you play. And now you have a new set of eyes that you need to impress. So even the guys who had a job last year had to re-earn that job. And that's not a bad thing, David. That's not a bad situation for a team to be in when they have a head coach with the experience that Mike Miller has.
No, for sure. You have to be willing and able to, go out and make changes. You know what? But Ryan Dinwiddie always told me that, a couple years ago, the playbook was very dumbed down. He's like, I had to go and simplify it because the offense was not able to execute the plays he wanted. Then, as the players got more comfortable, then you started adding to it, and the playbook changes. It's all about adapting. Every team adapts. Every team changes because guess what? Player teams have a better understanding of the changes they want to make in the off season, and they have a whole off season where they put together a plan to implement something new, and that's what they do. That's what they do every year. It's no surprise that the Argos offense looks different, right? And how they're doing things. Some things still are kind of the same, the players, the personnel, right? But how they're executing plays, how they're taking more shots down the field. Like we know this is a team that wants to be aggressive. They don't want to be a very passive style team. Now, it puts them in a very big boomer bust situation, but they'd rather do that than be timid to make big plays. So those are sort of some of the things that they're going to have to work on throughout the year to see if that's something that's going to be sustainable. I think it is. I think they're going to have to do that because you're looking at uh, look at Montreal. That's a team that put up 48 points
Yep.
against the Elks.
Edmonton, the team that
You
they're
can't be a
projected
passive offense when you're going up against a team that put up 48 on 38, 31, 34, 48. Montreal hasn't had a game where they've scored fewer than 20 points since they lost to the Elks, and they had 29 in that game. That's a team like you can't. If you're Toronto, you're like, well, we can't take a very lax approach to how we play because look at the teams we're going to have to go up against.
absolutely. Yeah, well, let's talk about the rest of the teams in the context of last week. We talked about the power rankings: Als, Elks, Rough Riders at 3, Stampeders, Argonauts, Blue Bombers at 6, Ticats, Lions, Red Blacks at 9. That's where they were last week. This week, I think at the top, what we've seen is basically the Owls have cemented them. They've done nothing but improve their number one overall ranking. I think that's fair to say. So they're good with where they are, and the Elks, on the other hand, do they get affected by the loss, David, and Saskatchewan winning as big as they did? Does that, in your
Well,
opinion,
in my power rankings with Sportsnet, I dropped them down to third.
the Elks?
The Elks
Yeah,
because
absolutely. And then the Rough Riders in second, right?
because this is an Elks team that got off to a really fast start, but the question that remains is whether or not that start was sustainable. Could they sustain what they were doing? I think right now we're starting to see maybe it was a little too early to anoint them as anything, right? And so if you're like if you're a Elks fan right now, you're happy where the position the team is in. I still think they're, a very competitive team, but I think they showed over the last few weeks playing against Saskatchewan, playing against Montreal, there's still a lot they need to learn to be able to maintain and get to that tier of being a true Grey Cup contender. You can't run to that. You have to be able to get there week by week. And these last couple weeks have shown they're still not 100% there yet. The mindset and the plays and the ability to not make those mistakes, that's a part of it.
Yeah, a little bit of inconsistency, and let's also put it into context. The team that was in third in the power rankings was the Grey Cup champs. So it's not like considering them second right behind the Owls ahead of the Elks is a stretch. I mean, that's the team that won the Grey Cup. And I like the Rough Riders because they can score. And last week they beat Ottawa 42-20. To win a game, you have to win. The one you're supposed to win. And how many times have we seen really good teams lay an egg against a team that, really isn't that good, right? So they played as well as they needed to play. Good for them. And, I think I agree with you. I agree with you that they would be in second. And then, of course, that would mean the Elks would be in third. And then we had the Stampeders and Argos 4 and 5. I think this week we flipped them. What do you think? I think the Argos now are in fourth, Stampeders in fifth. I don't think I dropped the Stampeders any further.
I kept the Argos in fifth, and I kept the Stampeders in fourth. I was tempted to move them, but I don't know if one game was enough for me to say that I was ready to make that switch just yet. I was close. I think there was definitely a case to be made that the Argos they're better than what their record was saying in terms of their ability. Their defense has gone a lot better. If their defense can continue to make these improvements, I think they will move to fourth. I think by next week they can. If they have a good showing against Edmonton, I think they can solidify themselves in fourth. I just think Calgary, that offense is still good. That offense should have won that game last week, and they didn't make the plays they need to. So that's why I have them kind of in the danger area of moving down. And not just to fifth, they could move down to six because the BC Lions are they might be awaking. What do Lions do? They from their slumber. I think the Lions are starting to. This game coming up between BC and Calgary could change a lot of things for the
Well,
power rankings.
let's talk. Let's stay away from next week for a second.
Yeah,
Come up games. Let's get settled in on where we think they are, and then once we've got our little list, and then we'll talk about the upcoming games and how they can change how the teams are. What do you think? So the
sure.
Argos are in fifth. The Blue Bombers, I don't think they're
I got
effective.
them in seventh.
You dropped them below the Lions.
Yes,
We have the Lions next.
I had the Lions. I had the Lions at six. So it's Calgary, then it's Toronto at five, BC at six. I think BC is again. I know their record says one thing, but I think the last couple of games have shown this team is getting back.
And where are you putting the Bombers? Didn't play. How much more could they drop? The Ticats.
I yeah, but I just think the Blue Bombers the last few weeks have really disappointed.
So you're keeping the Ticats in seventh then?
No, I'm having the Ticats in eighth. I put them down.
Oh, okay.
The Ticats. So the reason why the Blue Bombers, I know someone are like,
Hang
well,
on.
they didn't play.
I'm confused. The in seventh you have who do you have? You have the Lions in sixth.
Yeah, the Blue Bombers at seven.
Okay, so you didn't drop them down any more than that.
No,
Yeah. Okay.
it's
Now we're good.
it's because the lines have gone up. I think the Blue Bombers have dropped. Yes, I know they didn't play, but I'm seeing a team that's going in a different direction in Winnipeg, and I'm seeing a different team going up. in BC, and then I have the Tiger Cats dropping.
Right. And then the Red Blacks staying fixed because there's nowhere else for them to fall.
Yeah, even and what did we say? Even if there was a 10th team, we would keep them in the last place.
Yeah, they're playing like a 10th place team in the league right now. Really, really terrible, a terrible record. So okay, so what we after last week we have now the Owls staying where they were at the top of the
Yep.
division. The Elks moving down to third. The Rough Riders moving up to third. The Stampeders staying in fourth. The Argos staying in fifth. The Blue Bombers drop to seventh. The Lions move up to sixth in this week. And the Tiger Cats drop to eighth, and the Red Blacks stay in ninth. So therein lies an interesting situation for the Argos. I would say that they deserve to be ahead of the Stampeders for the victory, but for the sake of this conversation, I'm good with the way it is. And then now what we're talking about is what this week. Well, Ottawa. We didn't talk about Ottawa's loss. They looked okay for like about 10 minutes, and then they fell back into their old habits of.
Yeah.
Um,
They just haven't had consistency. It's been very disappointing because they have not shown that they have enough over the three phases to play a full game. They haven't had it, and it's disappointing for sure. But unfortunately, that's the reality of their situation right now. They just don't have enough talent right now to put themselves in the tier of even being. I think eventually at some point they will win a game. I'm not saying the team is totally lost, but I don't see how this team is going to miraculously have a turnaround. Like it's tough. It's tough to find a lot of positives with that team right now.
Agreed, agreed. But I'll tell you, with Hamilton, there is a positive. Now, even though they dropped down in the rankings one position to eighth, where they did rise and where there is hope is they had a quarterback that came in Frost that looked pretty good. He looked like he understood the offense that Milanovic was preaching. He looked pretty good. Just wasn't good enough to win. But he had some possessions there, David. I was impressed with the rookie's play and being the third stringer. That's the other thing, right? Once again, Ford ends up being a little bit shown up by a guy below him, and Frost was I think he was a pleasant surprise for Hamilton. While the team lost ground as a team, I think they got some hope where maybe this guy can be a guy that can give them a 500 season and ensure that they get that third spot in the Eastern Division, which is threatened. Hamilton has to win some games here to keep the Western team out of the Eastern Division playoff game. So I don't know. I think they got a guy. I liked what he saw. What'd you think of Frost?
Yeah, I mean, I think he gives them more of what they want. That Trey Ford clearly wasn't giving it to them. Scott Milanovic is a big. I think Scott Milanovic is a big fan. Um, the offense looked more like an offense that can compete. That's for sure. I mean, they were right in that game. It's pretty. It's pretty. What's the word? Impressive for a player that was signed mid July. Yeah, he was in the UFL, so he already had some time he was already in playing shape, so it's not like he had to get himself into game shape. And if I'm not mistaken, he was in the organization for 2 seasons, and obviously went to the UFL so he can actually play football and not just be a third quarterback. So I think it's the best performance they've had from their backup quarterbacks. And if I'm Jake Dolagala, I'm worried about my spot on the team because I think he's probably going to be. I think he will. I think Trey Ford.
Well, one of them's got to go.
One of those two guys isn't going to last very long.
One of them's going to be looking for a job,
Yeah,
and it isn't going to be Trey Ford.
yeah, I don't think so. I have a hard
I think you're
time.
right about Dolagala being in a tough situation because if he can't fill in, and I think it's fair to say, would you say it's fair to say when I watched Frost play, I'm not saying he's the second coming of Bo Levi Mitchell, but I am saying he has the same tools that Bo Levi Mitchell has. He has a good arm, and he's very productive, right? And makes some nice plays. He has good control of the ball, and I think he's smart as well. And that's going to be hard for Gola to take over. And Ford again is pushed back into the recesses of a team. I just don't get it how Ford can't acquire the respect of the coach, the head coach. This is again, he ends up pushed back like he was in Edmonton, and I don't get it, David. I really don't get it. He looked pretty good in his first game, but somehow he doesn't survive in the next one. I don't get it. I don't know. Do you see anything that is I don't know what is it that keeps him from being successful?
Doesn't make enough plays with his arm. You
Relies
know,
on his legs too
it,
much.
he relies too much on his legs. He's not very accurate, so he struggles to make those plays that clearly Frost is a little more capable of making, right? And that's the thing is we always knew that Trey Ford was that type of quarterback. It's not like this is a new situation where like why is this guy why are they relying too much on a guy who just uses legs? But that's his game. They knew that when they signed him, and that's why I was confused about like them trying to turn him into a pocket quarterback. That's not who he is. And other teams know as soon as you get him into the pocket, you're gonna have a hard time. He's gonna have a hard time with it, and so it's very frustrating. I can understand the frustration if you're Hamilton because you thought Trey Ford bringing him in was going to give you that competent backup. It hasn't been there.
And David, come on, we also know the fact that Milanovic is the quarterback was for everybody. Even I assumed that okay, finally maybe he's got a coach that can help him
Yeah.
become a really good quarterback. And my biggest problem with him is if he can't learn how to throw on the run, that's my biggest concern with him. Because he runs so much, he's going to have to learn to throw on the run, or he's got to stop and run and plant his feet and throw the ball, which I don't think he can do that well right now. So I'd love to see him be able to throw the ball while he's running
Yeah, I would too. I like to see him be able to.
accurately.
Yeah, well, that's the other part of it too. Is you need to see him actually be able to throw the ball with confidence. Use those abilities that he has. He has the ability to do it. It's just I don't know if the confidence is there right now for him.
Yeah, well, he's never been one to have a lot of confidence. Is it justified that he has none? I don't think so. Is it the way it is and the way it's been? Yeah, that's what apparently so that he just can't seem to get the confidence going. So Hamilton, while they sit at the eighth spot, the only thing between them and last place is the Red Blacks, which is a very big cushion for Hamilton not to concern themselves with. But really, the concern with Hamilton is what's going on above them, and they need to improve because they have to get ahead of the Bombers and maybe the Lions as well. If they don't do that, then they will lose a playoff spot, and that's something the fans in Hamilton going into this season would never have dreamt of. Any team with Bo Levi Mitchell on it is going to compete for a Grey Cup, and that team with a Bo Levi Mitchell on it can do that. But we still know we know that he's not healthy enough to come back. There's no schedule for him to coming back,
Mm-hmm.
and I believe that's because he won't be coming back this year. And the only hope Hamilton has is that he's healthy enough to play next year. So Hamilton's in a tough spot right now. The same tough spot every CFL team that has a quarterback go down. They have to find an alternative, and it's difficult. I only know of one team that had to lean on an alternative that's been successful, and that's the Argos. They won a Grey Cup with their backup quarterback. I doubt there's any backup quarterback today over the long run. I know there've been flashes, I'll grant you that, but there hasn't been a backup quarterback that's done as well as the Argo backup that won the Grey Cup and the MVP.
he's the perfect example of a player that accepted that role because he struggled to be a starter. And so he made the decision, okay, if I'm not able to cut it as a starter, I'm going to look to keep myself in as a backup. And yeah, I mean, look, backups in the CFL, we've talked about this how many times, Frank, that they seem to be underappreciated in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and they do need them. A backup quarterback in the Canadian Football League is the next most important thing to having a starting quarterback. If you really want to have a conversation, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about if you don't have a quarterback that can take over from your starter, then you're totally dependent on the health of your quarterback, which is why the Canadian Football League, the biggest challenge they have is trying to figure out how to keep quarterbacks healthy. And other than putting a halo around them and not letting other teams touch the quarterbacks, I don't know what else you do. Blindside hits, all that stuff. Do you say you can't do that? I don't know. It's just the quarterback is so impactful, and because most of the quarterbacks are American, and most of them all of them play American football. The Canadian game, as much as fans like to bitch and complain about the game's becoming too American, it hasn't become American enough where an American quarterback can come in and step in and play like it's American football.
No, and that's the thing. No, no CFL team has found success really bringing in a guy right away and saying, "All right, this is your offense. Do what you want." Yeah, you go play like you did at Fresno State. Go play like you did at Clemson. They tried that. The Lions tried that with Bryce, and that didn't really work out for them. And they went with Salter, who I think had more traits this game similar to what Nathan Rourke had. Oh, they got Nathan Rourke back, so I don't even need to worry about that anymore.
Not anymore. Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So coming up, we've got a couple of games of interest. And of course, oh my goodness. What am I doing here? Okay, there we go. Okay. BC is in Calgary. Now, we know that BC is a team that is on the knife's edge of the playoffs. And Calgary is the team that they would like to catch. How do you like BC's chances after last week? They looked pretty good, David, and they came back with more defense, what they're known for, what they've been known for the past few years. As much as their star player is a quarterback, it's been their defense, in my mind, that has subtly helped make this team win. And they looked a little better last week. And against Calgary, they're going to have to go toe-to-toe with a really good defense and give their offense a chance to beat the Vernon Adams offense.
Well, the way I see it here is BC has a real opportunity right now, despite their tough start to the season. They can put themselves in a bit of a driver's seat in the West, in my opinion, with this game. Because they
Absolutely.
got Calgary, that's a team they're chasing. Winnipeg, they're going up against the Red Blacks. That could be, I hate to say automatic win, but it sets himself up to be a potential automatic win. But BC's got a couple of tough games here. They're really going to show if they're the real deal. That defense that has, as you talked about, that's gotten them back into the fold here. It hasn't been their offense. Their offense has done enough, but it's been their defense in a lot of ways. So I like their defense. It's a very aggressive defense, but it's probably a better defense than Calgary. I know Calgary's got a lot of playmakers. Just the defense hasn't really worked really well there this year. It's also because the offense is just so explosive too that they hadn't really worried about the defense in Calgary. And Winnipeg, those are two teams that BC's chasing. But as we just talked about, finishing fourth in the West might be enough if Hamilton's not able to come up with wins.
Yeah.
So this is a crucial week for two teams, and that's BC and Hamilton. And I think this game for BC, they can leapfrog Calgary. And if I'm Calgary, you lose. Oh boy, this is going to be a tough. It's it's gonna be a tough week for them if they lose this one.
And let's keep in mind, the crossover doesn't guarantee you a win. In fact, the crossover has been basically Death Valley for the Western Division. They have not
Yep.
had much luck coming to the East, so it's not a cakewalk because you make it to play in the Eastern playoffs. So it'll be very interesting. And you're right, BC right now at 3-5, Calgary at 4-5, Winnipeg at 4-4. So depending on how those three Western teams do, not only will they affect our next week power rankings, they'll affect the standings this week. And the standings, that's what this is all about. There's still plenty of time to win or lose a playoff spot, right? But one thing all three of these teams, Winnipeg, Calgary, and BC, have in common is they need to find a way to be consistent. All three of them have been really, really good, and all three of them have been bad enough to lose without an opportunity to win. So it's important that these three teams establish themselves, because full well it's going to be Edmonton and Saskatchewan at the end deciding who's first and who's second, because I don't see any of these other three in the Western Conference competing for first or second. Again, making the playoffs in the Western Division is what you're shooting for. The consolation prize will be, it seems, by virtue of the 3-6 Hamilton Tiger Cats. I've mentioned the position where the Western teams are, where they can get the consolation prize, which is going to the East to play a playoff game. Now, that's not a kick in the behind. That's an opportunity. That's not a bad thing. It's just something that, playing in the East, in the Eastern final Eastern playoffs has been a tough road for Western teams.
Yeah, no, and I do think that if you are a West team right now, you don't want the crossover. You want one of the top three spots. But if you're Winnipeg, Calgary, and BC, you're gonna have to do a lot to get yourself into that Edmonton, Saskatchewan range. And I don't think they're there. You're totally right. I think that's a 2-team race for first. I think maybe one of these teams goes on a roll, but that's asking a lot considering how their seasons have gone. Like you look at Winnipeg, Calgary, they've been the worst teams at home. When does that ever happen? That Winnipeg is not a good home team.
Yeah, they've had a bad start to their home games. It's been a real interesting situation.
By the way, I don't know if just a side note, I don't know if you realized Toronto's home record is 1-0. Didn't they have home games in Hamilton, Saskatchewan, and Winnipeg to start the year? So
They
what?
did.
I just kind of found that funny. But yeah, if I'm BC, if I'm Calgary, if I'm Winnipeg, you don't want the crossover. BC is probably the only team that maybe wants the crossover because they feel like they could probably compete with a Toronto or Hamilton, depending on which one finishes second.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt that you can think that, right? Again, though, it's about coming to the East Coast, and it's about practicing, preparing for the game. It's not like being Toronto and practicing for a playoff game against Hamilton or even Ottawa or Montreal. That's the issue here. It's the travel. The travel's what makes it difficult in the playoffs for the Western Division when they get to do the crossover thing. So it is what it is. Okay, so in that first game, you got BC and Calgary, and they right now Calgary is in fourth, and the Lions are in sixth. Can a really good game by BC change that? Absolutely. And it also depends, David Fair or not, how well they play. Like the closer it is, the less tendency there will be to drop, the Stampeders anymore, or raise BC right on that victory. But
Mm-hmm.
but at the end of the day, these two teams need to establish something, and this is a big game. It's a really big game. I don't think it's lost on the teams as well. These are two teams that have aspirations to make the playoffs, and when you make the playoffs, you can win a Grey Cup. You got to get there, and then you've got BC that is still a little, I'll say, probably a little bitter because they had the Grey Cup and they didn't make it, and they would love to ruin it for Calgary. And Calgary's got the Grey Cup coming in Calgary, so
Yeah.
we'll see. if that adds to the pressure. I mean, it's no mistake or accident that they've played well this year, and I think they'll play better. But I'm dying to see how this game goes. The Calgary defense, the offense of BC, which hasn't been humming. We'll see if it can start humming. But to hum, it's going to have to hum against a really good defensive team.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? They're gonna have to. It's a good defensive team, that's for sure. But yeah, this is a very interesting week. We haven't even talked about Winnipeg.
We can do that now. And if you're done with
Nope.
BC Calgary,
Yeah, I think like Nathan Rourke, I'll always pick him over Vernon. Unfortunately, Vernon has done some good things, but we saw last week if a defense puts pressure on him, he falters. We talked about it at the game too. Um, Winnipeg is probably feeling a little giddy knowing
uh-huh.
it, that they get their quarterback back against Ottawa. So Zach is back. How long is Zach back for? That's what I'd like to know.
I like what the
Is he
coach.
back or is he back?
I like what the coach said in an interview this week. He says things are miserable around here when Zach's not starting. Nobody likes the way this is right now, and life is miserable when Zach is on the sidelines, and that goes for the whole team as well. He is their team leader. He's the heart of that team, and as far as historically the past few years, Grey Cup victories and great seasons behind him, he has been central to that, and they need him. So we'll see how healthy he is and if he can stay healthy. It's a tough situation. The older you get, Father Time, keeps reminding you time has passed. We'll see how he recovers with this injury. And it was probably a neck injury if you talk to him.
Yeah, and I don't know if he wants to be continuing talking about his injuries. I
I
know
know
it's
he
been
couldn't.
tough for him,
Very.
but he's gotta understand that it's been a knock on him for a while. But I think that he's hopefully getting back to being the quarterback. He's back hopefully for more than just a week because Winnipeg needs him. They got away with one game against Toronto without him, but the last three games they have not looked like a team that's competitive. Unfortunately, Drew Brown. Has it all been Drew Brown's fault? I don't think so. I think Drew Brown has been put in a lot of pressure, and they don't think they wanted the pressure on him to have to win games. But it's kind of unfortunately, it's the where they find themselves right now.
Does Ottawa start McLeod? I would. They
It's a
just
good question.
they
I
just
didn't
keep him in
even
the
I
back.
didn't
They
even
just keep him in
check.
the back burner. They got to do something to change their luck. I think changing the quarterback would be a good way to start.
It wouldn't surprise me if they consider it. Honestly, you're not wrong, Frank. I think that
I would like to see him there. If I'm Otto, I'm looking for a change. I'm looking for a new motion.
so. Looks like right now the depth chart has it as I had it for a second here. Mayer is still in at quarter as the starter. McLeod is second. Maybe this is a game where if Mayer is out of it, they're gonna make the move.
I think they should. I understand the loyalty to Mayor. I understand the Calgary fit. I understand that. But McLeod has won some football games. He's the reason the Argos made it to the Grey Cup so that Kelly could be the hero in the last 5-10 minutes of the game.
Be true.
Right.
True.
So, I mean, I'd give him a chance. But that's just me. I guess I'm not as patient as some coaches. I
Yeah,
really,
Frank, you're too Italian for your own good one.
you don't play good. You sit down. We bring the other guy. He come play.
Essentially, essentially how it works out, right?
Well, and I'm saying that because desperate times call for desperate measures. This is what is it? 0-7 now. What are they? 0-7, 0-8.
0-8.
Excuse me, 0-8. They're 0-8 right now. I mean, another game. If they lose again, that'll be half a season down the drain without a victory. It's time to win a game. I mean, everybody needs it. The organization needs it. Most of all, the fans need it. Give us a win, for goodness sake. And you know what? I think Ottawa could beat Winnipeg this week. I'm not calling them to win, but I am saying they've got a shot here. If they can take advantage of a rusty Zach Collaros, and then maybe even a little of overconfidence on Winnipeg's part because their starting quarterback is coming back. I know I'm talking emotional stuff here, but football has an emotional context, and in some ways, and Ottawa needs a victory, and they got to play like they need the victory, and they've got to play every play like it's the last play of the season. And most of all, I'm talking to the players now, and I'm sure the fans agree with me. Play well or find someplace else to play, because at the end of the day, something's got to change. 0-8 doesn't mean things. The status quo does not work with 0-8, and 0-9. Definitely status quo. Nope, doesn't work for me, and it won't work for the fans.
Well, I think they already made a case with Geno Lewis, right?
Yes,
They already made that move. I think they sent that
they
message.
sent that message. Yeah, that memo went out. You're right
So
about that.
but I do think, yeah, I don't think you're wrong, Frank. I do think more changes definitely need to come.
They got to do something. They get the same doesn't work. The definition of insanity. Toronto at Edmonton. We touched on this game. I like Toronto in this game for one very important reason, and that is their defense is finally starting to play like you and I both thought they could. This is probably the last couple of games have been the best games for the defense, where they've been consistent, or at least more consistent, and been able to play them while they play aggressive. They're still a little bit. They play a little bit on the conservative side. I appreciate the aggressiveness that the defense plays, but I'm not for overplaying your hand. And this team, as aggressive as they've been, and as important as that is to the head coach, they can't overplay. And I think the last game proved that they understand that they can't overplay. And what did you see? The opposition overplayed, and that's why they won. So, there's proof in that last game that Toronto played with Calgary that overplay the ball when you're on defense or on offense, you could have a problem. So I think they're starting to find the sweet spot defensively between aggressiveness and being conservative and ensuring that defense is the primary goal, not offense while you're defending.
Yeah, I'm like, Toronto has the playmakers too, but so does Edmonton. Toronto knows that. That's a team that's going to give them their defense. This is the biggest test the defense is going to have since they played Montreal. That didn't go well, but that defense has changed since they last played against a team like Montreal. This defense has gone better, and it's gonna Edmonton too. Like that's a good Like it's gonna be a good matchup. That's the game of the week for me. There's two
Absolutely.
teams that want to prove something.
And what they learned with Vernon Adams is that they can't let him loose. They've got to stay on him, and the same has to be true with Fajardo. They've got to contain him. They've got to make sure that he's rushed, and when he's out of the pocket, he's running for his life. That's what the Argos have to do, and they've done a bit more of that now. That's the thing that I think the pass rush hasn't been better. Lemon has been an incredibly good, the old guy just keeps trucking. You just plug and he plays. And that the pass rush with Fajardo, they need that for sure with Fajardo, because they've got a ton of receivers. They got passes they can make, and they got players they can send the ball to. So the Argos are going to have to, for them to do that. And on the other hand, Edmonton has to give Fajardo time. And also, they have to make the big plays. But I think a lot of the plays that they're going to make, if they're going to beat Toronto, are going to be 10, 15-yard passes, not 40-yard ones, the 10, 15. If Argos give them too many of those, Edmonton's killer with that. They've got enough guys that can, and then there's Rankin.
Yeah, but he hasn't been the Rankin that we've been expecting. But
They've been kept silent for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't want to be the team that all of a sudden is the team that allows him to be who he normally is, right? They want to keep him in that position where he's not that important in the game.
For sure.
And they've been good at stopping the run. So it's not like Rankin has an advantage over the Argos. The Argos have done well in the pass rush. They've done well against the run. and their defense has been a little more consistent and less sacrificial of stopping big plays because they want to get the interception and or change of possession.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be an interesting game. Now, Saskatchewan and Hamilton. David, we saw what happened. It's going to be a repeat of what happened last time. I just don't see Saskatchewan allowing Hamilton to do what Hamilton needs to do to win. I just don't see them allowing that to happen. Hamilton's in tough here.
Yeah. If there's a Saskatchewan team that you don't want to face right now, it's this one because they've found their stride right now. This is not Hamilton. This is not the type of team you want to try to go and rebound against. But if Hamilton finds a way to win this game, it will send a message. But
if they do it with their young quarterback, it'll give him a message, and we'll see how long he can ride that success.
Yeah, no, it's a very tough. It's a tough situation for Hamilton to go from playing BC and losing that game like that to now you got to figure it out against one of the top teams.
Well, they got to figure out. They're not as bad a position as Ottawa, but they're not that far removed from where Ottawa's at. Hamilton needs to figure out how to win because they need to win some games. We keep saying it. The playoffs depend on it. There's no automatic because you're in third and East. It don't mean you make the playoffs. And they can't play like they think it does. They've got to play like they got to win. And, now that the Argos are playing better and their record is much better than Hamilton's, it was only a few weeks ago. The roles were totally reversed. The Argos have had a good 3 weeks. Hamilton, on the other hand, not so much. And Hamilton needs to straighten things out.
No, for sure.
All right. Any final comment in the week that we've left out?
No, I think we covered it all.
For me, I'm hoping and looking forward to the continuation of the Canadian Football League being a Canadian league playing Canadian football. The games have been very interesting, and the games have been Canadian Football League games. There may be a little bit of a difference, but so far, I still see the excitement that Canadian Football League brings out in its teams, its players, and of course, for the fans. Thanks for watching, everybody. He's David Morisuti. I'm candidate Frank Stanishi. Hope to see you again next time around. And of course, we record this and it'll pop on Friday morning. So we'll see you on Friday morning.